Ayan, pupunta kami sa boat. Ira-round kami ng boat. Malilate na kami. Malilate na kami. Ang mahal pa naman ng bayad. One and a half hours. Yes.
Do you guys have any questions?
I got my tickets online for the boat.
Is it for the 3 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. So the architecture tour, that the 3 o'clock is at dock 3. They're boarding right now.
Okay.
If you have your tickets on Ticketmaster,
Yes.
you should be fine. Just make sure you have your barcode, or if you have it on your wallet.
Okay. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Come on, Angel. Yeah, it's just they're boarding now.
Papasok na kami dyan.
Yes.
Ayan, sasakay na kami sa boat. Ayan. Ayan. Ayan yung boat na sasakyan. Ayan, ang dami ng tao. Ayan, iikutin namin lahat yan. Ayan.
Problems with your tickets?
Yeah, I just have to log in.
And 3 adults. Go ahead. Have your bags ready for you.
Naloko na kami. Hi. Oh my gosh. Ayan. Ang dami namin. Ayan.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard Chicago's Emma Lady. My name is Dave. I'll be your captain for the trip. Let's go through a few safety announcements before we get started. First off, we're going to be going under several bridges. Please know reach and protect us to bridges. Jean-Baptiste Point de Savo is the first settler here, about where this one-story building, glass-story building over here is the Apple store. He settled there and was the first settler. So things were moving real quickly here at that point, but terracotta on the outside of that building. Terracotta is a baked clay, and they pick up the decoration on this in terms of the traditional classical styles that are coming over from Europe. Historically, those kinds of references on this building. This is a Spanish Renaissance revival structure. It's got this metal frame on the inside with a terracotta on the outside to serve as fireproofing. Contrast that with this metal frame building you see here with a fidelity sign on the outside. This very bronze metal frame with a glass on the outside. 1965. This is a modernist style, where the modernists said we aren't going to cover up with those classical references. We're not going to be committed to those kinds of historic traditional forms, but we're going to express what our technology is today. So what you have here is a metal frame being expressed on the outside, bringing as much glass as you want on the outside, covering up that metal frame with concrete or fireproofing, putting another metal panel on the outside of all of that to identify all of that metal framing that's going on the inside of that building. This one-story glass building here immediately to your right is the Apple Store, 2017 by Norman Foster in this building. We're coming under the Michigan Avenue or Gustavo Bridge to the center of the city. I'm going to stay with the buildings on your right. We'll be coming back through here, so buildings I don't get to on this tour here going in this direction we'll cover when we get back on coming back this direction here. But the first building I want to point out to you is the one on the right with a name on it. and you should recognize the name. This tower, the Trump Tower, is a 2009 building designed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Adrian Smith is a design architect, and this is a contemporary style of architecture where the glass is wrapped around the outside of that frame. To point out a couple things. One is that the lower levels you see are set back, and the columns come through out of the top of the building, the top volume of the building. So the idea, this is a modernist idea, is where you take the volume of the building, pull it off the ground, and let it be lifted up by these columns. You want to show an expression of defeating gravity. You're not bearing down on the ground, you're not settling on the ground, but you're lifting the building, pulling the building off the ground.
1.5 ang biyahe namin nito. Para makita lang lahat ng ano. Makita lang lahat ng magagandang building.
So they're trying to give a context to this building. Next building on your right, that dark metal frame building, very rigid, organized grid building here, is the Plaza. This is by Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe is a German architect, comes to Chicago in 1938, and it probably sets the pattern for what these modernist buildings are. This is a 1971 building. In fact, it was his last building that Mies van der Rohe designed and had built. What Lee says is, I'm not concerned, I don't think about historic references. I want to express our own culture. I want to express the technology we have, because that's what our tradition is. It's a modern tradition. So he's relying upon the proportions, the scale, the detail. He's saying the life of the building is coming through the people that occupy this building. I'd say this building really is a reference building where things are either leading up to it or going to lead back to that building as we go forward in these different styles of building. Formed in concrete, this is Marina City, 1967, and it's by Bertrand Goldberg. Goldberg is a contemporary with Mies van der Rohe. And so this is a modernist style of architecture, but obviously it's quite different than that AMA Plaza. Goldberg says, I'm not really enamored with the rigid, organized grid that you see here on those metal frame buildings. I want to play with concrete. I want to create more organic forms. So what they've done here is created two round towers.
Super grabe.
They're condominiums. There's a 24/7
Oh my
lifestyle
gosh,
here.
kinasla ito.
Retail, there's 18 floors of parking, automobile parking in this complex.
Oh my
They were
God.
designed to bring people
tataas
back
ng
into
building
the
nila.
suburbs in the 1960s, so that were all people were moving out of the city, and they wanted to bring them back into the city. So that's the motivation for these particular structures. I go back to your left at this point, and keep our eye down on the edge of the river just to point out the Riverwalk here. The Riverwalk, I give it a date of 2016, designed by Kiro Ross Barney. When I say design, what happens is Carol Ross Barney creates a different theme for each block as you go along this Riverwalk. It creates this continuous path that gets developed up to the confluence where we're hitting. We're going up branch off north and south in a T-shape. All the way from that point back out to Lake Michigan, mile and a half, and you have a continuous pedestrian bicycle path between those 2 points, and that's the Riverwalk. It's a way of establishing the fact that the river is now more than just a transportation system, and it's more than just a place that people are going to use for commerce and industry, but it becomes something for recreation for people to enjoy as they sit at the edge of the river. So each one of these blocks has a little different theme. Immediately to the left is what's called the theater, and it's nothing more than that, a sitting point to sit and observe the river.
Di ko nakikita
Straight above that, you see a stone building with a couple of towers, and on each side, and the center tower, the taller tower in the middle, LaSalle Wax. Coming after that classical revival, and they're looking for a way to create their own decoration as opposed to the idea of using those historic references on as we do in a classical revival building.
Ang taas. Ayan.
I would continue on the left, and we're coming up to the confluence here, and the confluence is where we're going to branch north and south in each direction. We'll go both directions. But coming up to the confluence, on your left, you see a tall tower there, stone building with a couple of spires up at the top, a dome-shaped cover up there at the top. There's actually some reference decoration there to the bridge, to a bridge's construction up at the top. That building is 225 West Wacker. It's a 1988 building. This building is really iconic here in the city because it's located in a very strategic point at the curve of the river. This is classified as postmodernist, but it's really very just contextual in the way the curve is related to the river. And then the back two sides of that building are back on the Chicago Bridge. So the curve is on the hypotenuse of a triangular shape and plan. And it has its historical references in that there's a base to that stone at the base, a shaft, which is the glass going up, and the knife-edge glass at the top. That goes back to referencing what a traditional classical column has in terms of the detail: base, shaft, and cap, the building. So that's an idea. That is an idea, a postmodernist idea going back. I point this building out because this is 1909. This is late Chicago commercial style building. Very simple, very clean. Those metal balconies get added, evidence it becomes a residential structure. But what it really shows is how it's very desirable in terms of it's got these high ceilings, exposed wood structure on the inside, and this is the kind of clear commercial style that was developed in the late 19th century here in Chicago, and responding to the Chicago fire. And that clear kind of organized system style is what becomes a basis for the modernist buildings throughout Chicago. Montgomery Ward area. Montgomery Ward was a retail salesman that came to Chicago in 1872, and Montgomery Ward decided that he could sell products better with a catalog business. So he created this 1,000-page catalog, and there were 3 buildings here. Now Montgomery Ward goes out of business in the early 2000s, so they're no longer here. There's 3 buildings. The first one here is with the executive headquarters, executive building, with the 2 white towers and the glass between, the one in the distance there. This is a 1974 building by Minoru Yamasaki, and it was made into condominium
libre lang yung ano dito, inumin, kung anong gusto mo.
Early 2000s. But what
Mamimili
Yamasaki
ka lang
did
kung
was
anong
put the
gusto
towers
mo.
at each end and open up just the interior and through all the way open, so it's glass. Now, those are originally office buildings. Those are condominiums in that building today. This is Montgomery Ward Park here, which serves pretty much as a center for the community center for this River North area that you see. And you can see more of those warehouse type of early Chicago commercial style buildings in the distance. This is Montgomery Ward's building. This was their administrative headquarters. This is where they moved to the center in the 1930s. From Michigan Avenue, they moved over here. This building was designed by Willis McCulley, who was a staff architect with Montgomery Ward. And again, Fitzgerald Associates have taken this building and made it into a condominium project. And once again, you can see how the metal balconies get added to make that residential evident on the outside of the building. You can also see a Riverwalk carved out at the base of this building. The city is really, at this point, requiring that everything gets built along here has a Riverwalk. And the difficult thing is trying to connect all those Riverwalks the way that happened along the main stem that we came up.
Okay, there.
The next building on your right is this long horizontal building with the brick vans on the outside. And the
Ayan, may dinadalhan ka ng ano kung ano gusto.
Groupon sign up at the top here. This is the Catwalk house from Montgomery Ward, 600 West today, and this is a multi-use building. It's a concrete framed building. It's over 1,000 feet long, and there's a couple of things. What they did here was that they had all the products here, the Catwalk products, on shelves throughout this building. These huge floor plates they have. And then when you ordered something, they had what were called pickers on roller skates going up and down the aisles to pick those objects off the shelf and be able to mail them or deliver them to your residence. Desirable today in terms of other buildings like this, in terms of this huge floor plate, and that offices like this opportunity to put their whole operation on one level and not having to connect vertically with going up multiple floors. So this building actually becomes very desirable here. Straight ahead of us, you see the river looks like it's branching in two directions. The river is to the left. To your right is a channel, man-made channel, that was dug in here because they were quarrying brick back in the 1800s here, and they wanted to get that clay brick out of there into the Great Lakes shipping channels. They dig this channel here, which finally connects back to the river about a mile and a half up there to the north, leaving an island. You can see it against the background of the Montgomery building, called the Spirit of Progress. It's on the River Place 1 building, Montgomery Ward building. It was actually a third in a series of sculptures. The original one was used. The bridges here are called trunnion bascule bridges, and what they rely on a trunnion bascule. The trunnion's a pivot point, and then there's a counterweight. It's like a teeter-totter seesaw, and a counterweight to the deck, and a counterweight to go through that pivot point there to lift the bridges here. So we just passed the Kinsey Railroad Bridge, which is permanently lifted, and you can actually see the counterweight on the back of that picture. Most of these counterweights are buried underneath and under the bridge houses here at the base of the bridge. The stone building coming on your left is the Pacific Opera House. That's 1929. The Graham Anderson Folks in White. They moved here from the auditorium building, which is over on Michigan Avenue here in 1929, the Pacific Opera. And what you see here, you get this very big, this blank wall here on the side of the building, and there's a theater or an auditorium behind all of that. What that blank wall really represents is the attitude toward the river in 1929. We're going to have to extend out into the river in some way. Yeah, that's not going to happen for a while, I think. But anyway, that is the kind of vision that the city has to make all of this continuous throughout here.
Ooh, yeah.
On your right, coming up on your right, I've got 4 buildings here, all by Skid Row and Zamero. I like to point them out because it shows some different styles as the time goes by. These first 2 buildings here on your right, on these buildings. This is the 1960s buildings. The middle frame building goes back to that East Vanderwood style of showing the construction of metal frame and trying to express the style of the day here. This is Skid Row and Zamero is picking up that style of architecture here. The next building, the one coming up on your right here again, with a white concrete frame on the outside of the building. What you see here, looking at it from an architect's perspective, is look for new ways to express this, and you start to see this with a concrete frame on the outside of the building.
Wow, ang init.
It's essentially the same building. This is the metro lines and the Amtrak lines that come through here. It's a health club today.
Yeah, mga nagtutur din yan.
The interesting thing about this is that when they reversed the river, there's so much water coming through. The river wasn't wide enough to take it off. They actually built a tunnel underneath all of this to divert some water to be able to allow that water to come. 1980s, and this gets into that postmodernist style where the curve is identified with the context of the river and the smooth glass on the outside, minimizing the idea of trying to understand and express the structure of this building. But this is that kind of, again, architects, they're in their styles as time goes by. Building there on your left with that map on the wall, to 300 to South Wacker by F sign. The map locates us where we are on the river. We're going down this path here. There's a little bench up there, about 2/3 of the way out. Identify where we are on the river. We're going down. If you go down that river and you're going to hit the canal, that channel that connects out to the Illinois River. Building this is a 1921. This is the old post office.
This is 1921. 1921 daw yung building.
1932.
1932.
This is an Art Deco style of architecture. Really flat surfaces, sculptural relief on the outside. I don't see much. The insides are rather spectacular with lots of light and reflective surfaces. This building in 1996, the post office says there's too many floors in this building for a post office operation. There's 9 floors. We can't have that many. We need a new post office. So the building, 1996 to 2021, this year, is sat vacant. And it's just been opened again, renovated, and there are offices moving in. This building is 800 feet long, 345 feet wide, 9 floors. It's got this huge floorway again, and they are not having any trouble getting occupants to go into that building. Offices, corporations want to be in that building. So it is just starting to open up. You'll be able to go inside of this building and get some rather spectacular opens. It's got a big courtyard, 3 acres of rooftop on top of that thing that people will use for recreation. They're running track and all kinds of things like up there up on the top of that building. But also that highway actually goes right through the middle of that building. Coming on your right, beyond the bridge again, is this horizontal concrete building. And what they have done essentially is covered up. It's in 2 levels instead of the 9 levels here. And what they have done essentially is covered up all the transportation, which is what a post office is. And it's got 100 truck docks in there, 1,200 automobile spaces, 13 train lines come underneath all of this. They got conveyors that go from here to St. Louis if you ran them all out. So all of that is the transportation connections here are covered up with these horizontal bands on the outside of the building. On your left, this open area here is again just under its development, just starting actually. This is a 10-year project. It's a year or 2 into the development, where the Riverwalk actually built up here, this raised walk through here, which is actually constructed in place. And buildings just starting to be established. This is called South Bank. And beyond the other side here is an extension of this project called Riverline. It's designed by Perkins and Will. There's actually about 10 buildings going in here. The first one is this white building with the slanted surfaces on the outside called Cooper at South Bank, a year or 2 old. And we're starting another building right here where you see the cranes. Make the point that when the building starts here, it takes about 6 months to be able to start to see the thing come out of the ground. We have to go down to bedrock, and bedrock's 150, 200 feet down. So there's a lot of work going into caissons that get down to that bedrock there to be able to carry that load. So one of the difficulties here is to get down to the bedrock, and they had to learn that when they started to build these tall buildings. The concrete building here with the curved lines on the outside, scallop kind of windows here, and the boat slips at the base, it's called River City. This is a 1986 building by Bertrand Goldberg, who did Marina City that we saw earlier. So it's rounded concrete corncob tubes up back earlier. And again, this is a 24/7 kind of lifestyle here. This is more family oriented, but it's got retail, education. It's open here to open interior spaces. He wanted, Bertrand Goldberg really vision is much larger, but the city limited how much the size could be on this building. And then beyond that, you see parking lots now, but that is an extension of this new development that's actually just getting underway here. This is called Riverwalk, coming up here on the right. Okay, as we make a turn here, we're going to turn around and go back north. There's a building up on the right, something like that.
Wow, painting.
Building coming up on your left, I gotta point out, with the spire, the Gothic
Ang ganda mo.
balustrade up at the top of this building. The flying buttresses up at the top of this building. You see this very linear tower, very decorative
4
top
o'clock
at the top,
already.
and the flag up at the
4
top there. Chicago Tribune Tower residence.
Almost done.
There was a
We
Chicago
get
Tribune
here,
building.
the boat is
It was the
12.
product of a 1920 competition to design the most beautiful building in the world. It got built in 1925. This is the winner. 200 submittals here to build the most beautiful office. The land here to the left is again film. This wasn't there originally. It's called Illinois Center, and Illinois Center is residential office development here on top of the land. What happens here?